I was on my knees on the frozen floor when his eyes finally opened. Not wide. Not fully. Just enough. Enough for his fingers, blue, shaking, barely alive, to tighten weakly around mine. Enough for his lips to move. And enough for him to whisper the sentence that would detonate my entire family. They don't know, he rasped. A breath. Then softer, almost amused. Help me make them pay. I didn't answer right away. Because in that moment, I wasn't a disciplined servicewoman trained to stay calm under fire. I wasn't someone who'd slept through sandstorms and sirens and sleepless nights overseas. I was just a granddaughter kneeling beside a man who had been left to die like a forgotten appliance. The house was so cold my breath came out in clouds. The hardwood burned through my jeans. His skin felt like something pulled from a freezer, not a living human being. And behind me, on the kitchen counter like a cruel joke, sat the note. I didn't need to read it again. I already knew every word. But that was the ending of this story. The beginning happened hours earlier, before the ambulance, before the hospital lights, before I learned what my family had really been doing. Before I opened the door. I arrived just after sunset. Snow crunched under my boots as I crossed the driveway, my duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Uniform still on because I hadn't bothered changing. After weeks of travel and delayed flights, I just wanted to see him. To hear him complain about my posture, and ask if I was eating enough. I expected warmth when I turned the key. Heat. Light. Something. Instead, the cold punched me in the face. The kind of cold that doesn't belong indoors. My breath fogged instantly. I stood there for a second, confused, then stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The house was silent. No heated. No clatter from the kitchen. No decorations. No music. No tree glowing in the corner. Nothing. I set my bag down slowly. Hello. I called. No answer. The living room was dark except for the pale glow of a street lamp outside. The furniture sat exactly where it always had, but something felt off, like a house holding its breath. That's when I saw the paper. One page. Neatly placed. Lined notebook paper torn from a pad. I picked it up. We went away for a bit. You can look after him. That was it. No explanation. No phone call. No warning. Just a vacation note, written like they were asking me to water a plant. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Because surely this was a misunderstanding. Surely they hadn't left him here. Alone. In winter. Then I heard it. A sound so faint I almost missed it. A groan. Low. Muffled. Wrong. Training kicked in before panic had a chance. I dropped the note and moved down the hallway, boots echoing too loud in the dead house. The temperature dropped with every step, like I was walking deeper underground. I reached the spare bedroom door, pushed it open, and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. He was lying on top of the bed, fully dressed. No blankets. No heat. His hands trembled violently at his sides. His lips were tinged blue. His chest rose and fell like it wasn't sure it wanted to keep doing that. I was at his side in 2 steps. Hey. Hey, I'm here, I said, peeling off my heavy coat and wrapping it around him. His body shuddered like it recognized warmth, but didn't trust it yet. I grabbed my phone and called emergency services with one hand, holding his with the other, talking non-stop. Anything to keep him anchored. Help was on the way. But as I waited, kneeling there in that frozen room, something settled in my chest. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice someone made. And when his eyes finally opened and he whispered about revenge, I realized something else too. My family thought they had gotten away with something. They were wrong. The ambulance lights washed the snow red as they pulled into the driveway. 2 responders moved fast, professional, quiet in the way people get when something is very wrong but still salvageable. One of them took a single look at him and muttered under their breath, the kind of sound you make when you're already counting how close you came to losing someone. How long was he like this? They asked. I didn't answer right away. Because there are questions that feel less like questions and more like accusations. I just got here, I said finally. He was alone. That was all it took. They wrapped him in thermal blankets, checked his vitals, exchanged a look that said barely in time. I climbed into the back of the ambulance without asking. No one tried to stop me. Maybe they could see it in my face. I wasn't leaving him again. The ride felt endless. Sirens wailed. My knee bounced uncontrollably. I kept one hand wrapped around his, whispering nonsense, stories, reminders, promises. Anything to keep him tethered. At the hospital, everything turned bright and cold and fast. Warm fluids. Heated blankets. Oxygen. Machines that beeped in steady rhythms like they were daring his body to keep up. A nurse leaned toward me and spoke softly. The way people do when they don't want words to bruise. "He's lucky you came when you did," she said. "A little longer and—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I sat there through it all, jaw locked, hands clenched, anger pooling so deep it scared me. Not explosive anger. That was too easy. This was slow, controlled fury. The kind that plans. A woman with kind eyes and a clipboard eventually pulled a chair beside me. She introduced herself as a hospital advocate and asked careful questions. Was he supposed to be alone? Did anyone arrange care? Was the heat functioning? I answered honestly. Her pen slowed, then stopped. "This may qualify as elder abandonment," she said gently. "That's not a small matter." I nodded. I already knew. Hours later, when the machines had quieted and the chaos faded, he stirred again. This time he was more aware. His gaze focused. Sharp. Clear. Too clear for someone who was supposed to be confused and helpless. "They're gone, aren't they?" he asked hoarsely. I swallowed. Yes. He huffed out something between a laugh and a sigh. "Figures." I leaned closer. "Why didn't you call me?" His eyes drifted to the ceiling. "Phone line's been disconnected for a while. They said it wasn't necessary anymore." That sentence landed heavier than any insult. "They told me they'd handle things," he continued. "Said I didn't need to worry." I felt something inside me crack. Not loud, not dramatic, but permanent. "They left you here," I said. "Yes," he replied calmly. "They did." Then he turned his head slightly and looked straight at me. "They think I don't know what they've been doing." My pulse quickened. Doing what? A pause. "They think I signed everything over. That I didn't notice the money disappearing. That I was too old to question it." His mouth curved faintly. "They underestimated me." That was when he said it again. "They don't know about the papers." I leaned in so close my forehead nearly touched his. "What papers?" His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "Your grandmother prepared for this. Long before she passed. She trusted you." My chest tightened. "She hid copies," he whispered. "Proof. Instructions. Things they never found because they never bothered to look." I let out a slow breath. This wasn't just neglect. This was something else entirely. "You need to rest," I said carefully. He squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Tomorrow," he murmured, "you'll go back to the house." My jaw set. I was already planning to. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Good. Start where she prayed." I didn't sleep. Hospital nights have a way of stretching time until it feels unreal. The lights never dim fully. The beeping never stops. And every thought echoes louder than it should. By morning, I had a plan. I drove back alone. The street looked peaceful in daylight. Clean sidewalks. Familiar houses. A place people would never suspect held something rotten underneath. I turned the heat on immediately, watching the thermostat climb like it was correcting a crime. Then I stood there, arms crossed, listening to the house warm itself back to life. Start where she prayed. I knew exactly where that was. The small room off the hallway. The one no one used anymore. The one my family dismissed as cluttered and old-fashioned. I stepped inside and was hit with the faint smell of paper and polish. Her chair sat by the window. Her bookshelf sagged under the weight of years. I went straight to her old book. The one she never replaced, edges worn soft by time. Halfway through, my fingers brushed something that didn't belong. An envelope. My name written on the front in careful, looping handwriting. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I opened it. And with every word I read, the story I'd been told my entire life quietly fell apart. I sat on the floor with the envelope resting in my hands like it might explode. It didn't. It did something worse. It told the truth. Her handwriting pulled me straight back in time, sitting at her kitchen table as a kid, licking frosting off my fingers while she filled out cards and shook her head at how messy I was. Same neat curves. Same careful spacing. Same way she underlined names when something mattered. If you're reading this, she'd written, then things have gone the way I feared they might. I swallowed. She never wasted words. If she feared something, it meant she'd already seen it coming. She wrote about love first. About family. About how people don't always become cruel overnight. How it usually starts with entitlement wearing the mask of responsibility. They talk more about what they'll inherit than what they owe, she said. That line hit like a slap. She explained that she and my grandfather had gone to a lawyer quietly years ago. That they wanted their wishes followed, not assumed. That there were official documents on file, and copies hidden in the house. If something feels wrong, she wrote, trust your instincts. Call the attorney. He knows what to do. Tucked behind the letter was a small card with a law office name, and a local number written in blue ink. I pressed the letter to my chest for a moment, breathing through the ache. Okay, I whispered. I hear you. Then I stood up. If my grandfather was right, the proof wasn't buried deep. It was buried where no one had bothered to look. He used to joke that his best hiding spots were places my family avoided out of laziness. Turns out he wasn't joking. I started with the drawer beside her chair. Under an old deck of cards and a pen that hadn't worked in a decade, I found a metal tin. Inside it, coins, a useless keychain, and a thick bundle of folded papers held together by a brittle rubber band. My pulse kicked up. I opened it. The first document made me sit back hard on the floor. The house. The deed listed my grandfather as the sole owner. Not my parents. Not jointly. Just him. In the margin was a legal note outlining future interest, my name included. I blinked. Then I laughed once, sharp and incredulous. Oh, I said to the empty room. That's going to ruin their day. The next pages were worse. Bank statements. Transfer records. Month after month of money moving out of his account, and into one with my parents' name on it. No explanations. No receipts. Just steady withdrawals dressed up as help. I thought about all the times I'd been told how expensive it was to care for him. How much they'd sacrificed. How lucky he was to have them. My guilt evaporated. This wasn't sacrifice. This was siphoning. At the back of the stack was a copy of a will. Clear, specific, and notarized. Care provisions first. Safeguards in place. Limits spelled out in plain language. My parents were included. Just not the way they thought. Behind it, one last note in her handwriting. If they pressure you, remember she will do what's right. I closed my eyes. I will, I said softly. I gathered everything, every paper, every scrap, and sealed it into a large envelope. I locked it in the trunk of my car like it was classified material, because in a way it was. Then I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the phone number on the card. And dialed. The law office wasn't impressive. Old floors. Framed photos. A wreath on the door that had seen better winters. Which made me trust it more. The attorney listened without interrupting as I laid it all out. The trip, the cold, the hospital, the note, the papers. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. Your grandmother was thorough, he said. And very clear. He confirmed what I already knew. Everything matched. Everything held up. The neglect, combined with the financial misuse, wasn't just morally wrong. It had consequences. I don't want drama, I said. I want him safe. And I want the truth where it belongs. He nodded. Then you've come to the right place. When I stepped outside afterward, the cold air felt cleaner somehow. Like something rotten had finally been exposed to light. My parents were still away. Still sunburned and carefree. Still thinking they were in control. They had no idea what was waiting for them. And neither did they know that I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. They came back in the early evening. I knew because the headlights swept across the living room wall, slow and careless, like people who believed nothing bad could possibly be waiting for them inside. I didn't move. I was sitting at the dining table with a mug of tea that had gone cold a long time ago. The house was warm now, deliberately so. I wanted the contrast to sting. Luggage wheels rattled on the driveway. A laugh. A comment about food. Someone complaining about how long the trip back felt. Then the door opened. Warm air rushed in with them. Sunscreen. Salt. That particular scent of people who'd spent days doing nothing and felt entitled to it. "Oh," my father said when he saw me. "You're here already." "I've been here since yesterday," I replied. My mother's smile faltered. "Well, we assumed you'd manage when you arrived." "When I arrived?" I repeated quietly. There's a silence that happens when someone realizes the version of events they rehearse won't survive first contact with reality. That silence filled the room. "Where is he?" my mother asked. "In the hospital," I said. "He had hypothermia." She blinked. "That seems dramatic." I stood up. He was left in an unheated room. Alone. My father sighed the way people do when they want a problem to go away. "He was fine when we left." "No," I said. "He wasn't." I slid the envelope onto the table. They stared at it like it might bite. "What's that?" my mother whispered. "Everything you thought you controlled." My father opened it. Color drained from his face with every page. "These don't prove anything," he said weakly. "They prove everything," I replied. "The money. The house. The lies." He snapped the folder shut. "You don't understand how hard this has been." "Then why were you on a vacation?" "That one landed." Before he could answer, the front door opened again. Slow footsteps. And there he was. Wrapped in blankets. Leaning on a home care nurse. Standing in the doorway of his own house like a man reclaiming ground. My father gasped. My mother started crying. My grandfather looked at them calmly and said, "I came home before you sold it out from under me." Nos chauting. No teatrix. Just truth, spoken by someone who had survived their attempt to silence him. I stood beside him, steadying his arm. For the first time in my life, my parents looked afraid, not of punishment, but of exposure. The papers went back on the table. Questions were asked. Answers failed. Excuses collapsed. When my father finally asked what would happen next, my grandfather answered for both of us. "Accountability," he said. "Not revenge." The room felt smaller after that. Like there was no place left to hide. The meeting happened a few days later. Not in a courtroom. Not with raised voices or slammed doors. In a small, beige office with a fake plant in the corner, and a table just big enough for uncomfortable truths. My grandfather insisted on sitting in the front seat on the drive there. "I'm not luggage," he muttered while buckling himself in. "I'm a witness." I smiled, but my chest was tight. He looked smaller than he used to. Thinner. Winter had taken something from him that wouldn't fully come back. But his eyes, those were sharp. Clear. Alive. That mattered. The mediator greeted us calmly, like someone who'd seen families fracture and still believed repair was possible. She explained the rules. No interruptions. No rewriting history. Just facts. My parents arrived last. My mother looked fragile, wrapped in a coat too heavy for the room. My father wore his usual confident expression, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those darted constantly. To me, to the papers, to the door, as if escape might still be an option. It wasn't. We started with the heat. Then the money. Then the note. Each excuse unraveled the moment it was examined. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way lies tend to collapse when no one rushes to rescue them. When the bank statements were laid out, my father finally went still. When the will was read aloud, my mother covered her mouth. When the word neglect was used, not shouted, just stated, something broke. "I didn't think it would get this bad," my mother whispered. My grandfather leaned forward. "That's the problem." "You didn't think." Silence followed. Heavy. Necessary. The resolution wasn't cruel. It was thorough. Repayment. Oversight. Safeguards. Regular check-ins. Clear boundaries about who handled finances and care from now on. And most importantly, choice. My grandfather would decide where he lived. Who helped him. who had access. Control returned to the person it belonged to. When it was over, my parents looked smaller somehow. Not ruined. Not destroyed. Just exposed. Outside, the air was cold but honest. My grandfather stopped walking for a moment and looked up at the sky. I thought revenge would feel better, he said quietly. And? I asked. He shook his head. This feels cleaner. Months passed. Winter loosened its grip. Snow melted into slush. Then into nothing at all. My grandfather recovered more than anyone expected. Still slow. Still careful. But alive in a way that felt earned. My parents followed every requirement. Not perfectly, but sincerely enough to matter. They apologized, not once, but repeatedly. Awkwardly. Sometimes clumsily. But real. One Sunday, we sat at the same table where the envelope had changed everything. Dinner was simple. No speeches. No pretending. At one point, my father looked at me and said, "You didn't have to do this." "Yes," I replied gently. "I did." He nodded. He finally understood. Later that night, after my grandfather was settled and the house was quiet, he called my name. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me disappear." I sat there with him, listening to the house hum with warmth, thinking about how close we'd come to losing everything that mattered. They thought silence would protect them. They thought neglect would go unnoticed. They thought age meant weakness. They were wrong. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it shows up quietly, with documents, patience, and someone brave enough to speak when everyone else stays quiet. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do for someone you love is refuse to let the truth freeze to death. Please click the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.